This songwriting guitar lesson will show how to apply degrees to write songs on guitar, along with fretboard diagrams, some theory talk, and songwriting examples with various musical styles. We'll cover it all with the step-by-step approach. Many times musicians will use degrees instead of letters to communicate their musical ideas. And compared to using specific letter notes, degrees are more universal descriptions that help explain many aspects of music theory in a more concise manner. And before we get into how degrees are applied to songwriting on guitar, we first need to know how degrees are derived from the major scale. The major scale is the primary scale in music, and it provides the foundation or basic blueprint for all music theory. And most music students simply practice the major scale in its do, re, mi, or chronological order without ever looking at it as anything more than just an exercise. But in order to understand more advanced aspects of music theory and composition, which involves songwriting, it's essential to know how the primary scale is derived from intervals and degrees. The major scale consists of a specific arrangement of intervals, which are also known as steps. And intervals or steps, they are measurements of distance between notes. And on guitar, these steps can be measured by frets. So, for example, if we were to place our first finger on the second string first fret, a half step is a distance or span of one fret. A whole step would be a distance or span of two frets. So a half step equals one fret, a whole step equals two frets. Now, steps and intervals can be arranged into various interval patterns. And interval patterns are essentially the foundation or building blocks that all chords and scales are derived from. And the interval pattern for the major scale is going to be a whole step, another whole step, followed by a half step, then three consecutive whole steps, followed by a half step. And if we had to abbreviate the pattern, we could say 2 wholes and a half and 3 wholes and a half. And let's show you an example of how you can play this pattern on the guitar. Again, if we go to that second string first fret, which is a C note, we're actually going to start with showing an example in the key of C major. If we went up a whole step, then another whole step, then a half step, then 3 consecutive whole steps. If we do it again, you'll recognize the do, re, mi pattern. And this pattern, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, is a universal pattern. In other words, you can apply this to any letter or key. Our example was in the key of C. We could, starting from any root note, play the same pattern, and that would be the major scale interval pattern for that key. So for example, say we did the key of G on the first string, 3rd fret, whole step, half step, and this pattern, because it's universal, it could be applied to any instrument where the major scale intervals are played. It's important to memorize this pattern to understand, again, more advanced aspects of music theory. And once you have this pattern down and memorized, the next step, we're going to go into more detail in applying degrees to the major scale, which can then be applied to songwriting. Now, degrees are numbers used to describe notes or intervals within a scale. And to determine the degree of a particular note within the major scale, you simply follow the interval pattern and count up the pattern starting with the number 1. So let's show you an example. Again, we're going to go to the key of C, starting on that second string first fret. And that would be, since we're in the key of C, that very first note is the 1 note. So the first degree in the key of C is C. The second degree will be a whole step higher. That would be D. The third degree in the key of C would be E. The 4th degree would be a half step above that, F. 5th degree, G. 6th degree, A. 7th degree, B. And we go back to the 1st degree, an octave higher, back to C again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's how you apply degrees to the major scale. And on the chart we have a comparison here that shows how the letter notes, the degrees, and the do, re, mi tones match or sync up with the C major scale. Now, any letter note from any major scale will correspond to a degree by simply counting up the major scale interval pattern. So for example, what would be the second degree in the key of F major? Well, we would start with an F note. In this case, we'll do the first string, first fret. F is the first degree. The second degree would be G. Let's say we wanted to find the fourth degree in the key of F. Again, we simply count up. F, G, another whole step brings us to A. The fourth degree would be B flat. Degrees are essential in describing how chords are constructed and named. In fact, any chord name that includes a number, for example, a G7 chord or a D sus4 chord, is actually describing what specific degrees make up the chord. For example, an A power chord, which is notated as A5. Well, if we break down the A power chord, we know that the root is the 1 degree, A. The next note is E. If we took the A major interval pattern, A, second degree, B, third degree, C sharp, fourth degree, D, fifth degree, E. E is the fifth degree in A. So a basic power chord, just playing those two strings, A5 indicates A with the fifth degree. Some people thicken up the power chord. If we go to that third note, well, we'll see that that note is actually another A note. It's the root note, or the root note or octave of A. So if we thicken up the power chord, it's 1, 5, 1, or just 1, 5. But that explains how the power chord is notated as A5. Again, degrees are universal. If we shift it down to a G power chord, we have different letter notes, G, D, and G, but since intervals are universal or degrees are universal, 1, 5, 1 still applies also to a G power chord. Now, when it comes to songwriting, the most common example of using degrees is referring to the 3 primary chords in any key as the 1, 4, and 5 chords. The root note of each primary chord will correspond to the 1, 4, and 5 degrees from the major scale. So going back to the key of C, if we just, from our other lessons with songwriting, if we looked at the 3 primary chords in the key of C, C, F, and G, C is the 1, F is the 4 chord, and G is the 5 chord. But why we went through those earlier clips of breaking down the major scale, we know why they're referred to as the 1, 4, and 5 chords. And just to verify it, C is the 1, D, E, F is the 4 chord or 4 degree, and G would be the 5th degree. Another example, the key of G. G, C, and D. Well, with basic songwriting, we know those are the 3 primary chords in the key of G. They are also the 1, 4, and 5 chords. Again, verifying that with the key of G. 1, 2, 3, the 4th degree. This note is a C. The 5th degree is a D note, which corresponds to the 5th degree D chord. Now, many popular songs and ballads are based primarily on 1, 4, and 5 chords from a major or minor key, but substituting a 7th chord for the 5 chord is often used in songwriting to create a sense of drama or tension before a progression resolves back to the 1 chord. Let's do a couple examples here. We'll start with the key of G. Basic 1, 4, 5 progression would be G, C, D, and back to G. Let's strum that. Now, if we were to substitute a 7th chord for the 5 chord, the 5 chord is D major. We can substitute instead a D7th, and let's hear how that sounds. Slight variation, but the D7th is just creates just a little bit more tension compared to a standard D. And if we let's shift to the key of D. In this case, the key of D would be D, G, and A, 1, 4, and 5. Let's hear how that sounds first on its own. In this case, A major would be the 5 chord. We can substitute an A7 by simply lifting the first finger. Let's hear how that sounds. And once you have a better chord vocabulary, an improved chord vocabulary, you may know about another way to play an A7 chord voicing. That would be an interesting substitution as well. Still an A7, just a different one. Now, most blues songs are based on basic 3-chord progressions that feature the use of 1, 4, and 5 chords exclusively. And whether it involves strumming chords or playing a basic shuffle rhythm, the bass or root note of each chord or shuffle will correspond to the 1, 4, and 5 degrees of whatever key the progression is in. And we have some examples here from previous rhythm lessons we covered, which show how the 1, 4, and 5 chords are applied to each progression. Now, one standard chord transition is resolving a progression back to the root or the 1 chord. In a 12-bar blues, for example, bars 9 through 11 typically feature a 5-4-1 transition that winds down or resolves the progression back to the original 1 chord. And again, we have an example here from previous progressions and lessons we did showing how each of those progressions resolves back to the 1. I'll do a quick one where we play it here. Say an A shuffle, for example, if we're on bar 7 and 8, about to resolve through 9 and 11, 7, bar 8, bar 9, bar 10, bar 11. So that resolution going back home, again, creates a little bit of tension. It sort of winds down, going back to the home or the root to end the 12-bar progression. The 5-chord turnaround usually occurs at the end of a verse, and it produces a tension that revs up or leads into another verse. And this tension is a result of a 5-chord substitution for the 1 chord, along with the option to slightly alter the rhythm. We have an example here again of some of our other rhythm lessons we've covered where this is applied, the 5-chord turnaround, but I'll play a couple right now. With the Texas rhythm, which was in the key of E, the 5 chord is the B7. So if we back it up to the previous clip on bar 9 where we resolve the progression, bar 9 is the 5 chord, bar 10, the 4 chord, bar 11, and then for this 5-chord turnaround we go back to the B7th and we slightly alter the rhythm. You can see how that sort of revs up, creates a little drama tension to lead into another verse. But this isn't just limited to the blues. You can apply this to flamenco as well. Say a standard flamenco progression in A minor. If we were to resolve this one, we would have an E7th. We're going to go to bars 9 through 12. Bar 9, bar 10, bar 11, 5-chord turnaround with the 7th chord. Again, same kind of idea here where you're creating some drama or tension to lead into repeating another verse. Now, in more advanced blues arrangements, various 1, 4, and 5 chord substitutions can occur, along with adding, deleting, and rearranging various bars or measures where 1, 4, and 5 chords are typically played. A couple of basic examples here would be the version of Crossroads by Eric Clapton. In that progression, you shift to the 4 chord for bar 2 rather than staying on the 1 chord for the first 4 bars, which you typically do in a 12-bar progression. Here's a basic example showing the backing rhythm for Crossroads. Bar 1, A shuffle. Bar 2, go to the 4. Bar 3, and bar 4. Now that's just the backdrop. Now this riff is played over that, but the basic foundation or progression, you go to the 4 chord for bar 2. Same technique is applied to another classic, Stormy Monday, by the Allman Brothers. In this case, we're in the key of G, with the G 7th chord, bar 1. And for bar 2, we're going to go to the 4 chord. Give you a chance, if you want, figure it on your own. What is the 4 chord in the key of G? Make it a 7th in this case. It's going to be C 7th. You could also do a C 9th. That's bar 2, bar 3, bar 4. In that particular arrangement, again, if you understand degrees, it's a complex blues arrangement compared to a standard 12-bar blues. But again, if you can describe how to apply any of these substitutions, it's simply made easier by using more concise degree terms instead of specific letter descriptions that are limited to one key. Now, one of the standard chord substitutions in flamenco music involves the 5 chord. And if you want to learn how to write a basic 3-chord flamenco-style progression in any key, we can describe how to do so in just one sentence if we use degrees. And here's the sentence. Change the 5 chord in any minor key to a major chord. An example, the key of A minor. The key of A minor, the 1, 4, and 5 chords are A minor, D minor, and E minor. But if we take that 5 chord, E minor, and substitute or change it to an E major, compared to E minor, well, when you throw that into a progression, a flamenco progression, let's do a quick strum here. And if we rev it up, and again, that's sort of that flamenco style sound compared to an E minor. It's just a little bit different. Another example, let's go to the key of B minor. How would we make a progression in B minor sound flamenco-y? Well, also, not only are we doing the chord substitution, but you also apply a certain rhythm as well with the strumming hand. But in the key of B minor, the 1, E minor, the 4, F sharp minor, the 5. In this case, F sharp minor becomes major. And again, if we apply the 7th chord substitution to the 5, and that's done a lot in flamenco, we can make that a 7th chord. And let's hear how that sounds. And I say flamenco, but really this is sort of a drama effect. And again, that drama effect is essential to a lot of flamenco progressions, but there are a lot of popular songs where this same substitution occurs that aren't exactly 100% flamenco. For example, Hotel California. That also, same key B minor, goes to an F sharp 7th as well. Again, same idea applied to a different style of music. And also standards such as House of the Rising Sun, Allegro, and Greensleeves. Those are all in A minor, where you will see the 5 chord being used, either in E major or in E 7th. Again, it helps to create that sense of drama or tension, usually in resolving a progression. Now, for a standard ballad-like transition, you can take the 4 chord in any major key and follow it with a minor 4 chord shift before resolving back to the 1 chord. Let's take the key of C as an example here. The key of C, C, F as the 4 chord, and G. So with this minor 4 chord shift, we would go from F major to F minor back to the 1. Let's do a 1 strum on that again. The major, the 4 chord, F major, the minor 4, and then the 1. And we could strum that. And you can hear this particular key in this particular example used in David Bowie's Space Oddity, I'll Follow You in the Dark by Death Cab for Cutie, and When I'm 64 by the Beatles.